The day her mother kicked her out, she thought she had lost everything. 25 years later, a phone call changed everything, because her mother had been watching her this entire time. But why? What was the secret her mother had been hiding for so long? And what price was her daughter about to pay for it? Some endings come with the slam of a door. Others echo for years. The rain had started before the fight ended, and by the time the girl stood on the porch, suitcase in hand, the gutters overflowed like something inside had broken. Her mother didn't raise her voice. That was the worst part. No rage, no sobs. Just the brittle clink of a teacup being placed too gently in the sink. The same cup she'd used every morning, blue porcelain with a single hairline crack near the rim. It had belonged to her mother. And it always trembled slightly when set down, as if remembering every argument ever whispered in the kitchen. She hadn't meant for it to go this far. Not today. She'd meant to come clean. To say the baby wasn't a mistake, not to her. That she was still the same girl who used to lay on the floor reading aloud while her mother painted her, nails crimson red, and pretended not to cry. But her mother never looked up. Just wiped her hands on a dish towel already damp with something darker. It was the silence that did it. Not the words, not even go. But the nothing that came after. The girl waited, hoping for something, maybe a flicker of softness, a hand, anything. But her mother's back stayed turned. The rain was falling harder now, loud against the tin roof. But inside it felt even louder. Like silence had teeth. She moved to the door, opened it, didn't close it yet. One last breath, her eyes scanned the living room. The sunflowers in the chipped vase were wilting. The smell of lemon polish lingered under the scent of wet wool. On the wall, the family photo from 5 years ago tilted slightly. Her father had already been gone then, but her mother insisted on keeping his picture in the frame. She'd once said, "Some men leave quietly. Others leave something behind to haunt the room." Behind her, the soft click of the kitchen drawer. She turned her head just enough to glimpse her mother sliding something inside something small. A folded paper? No, maybe a photo, she wanted to ask. To scream, but 17 was too old to beg and too young to leave with dignity. So she picked up her suitcase. It was cheap and secondhand, smelling faintly of mothballs and something like mint. Her mother had bought it at a church rummage sale 2 summers ago, saying, "You never know when a girl needs to go." At the time she'd laughed. Now it felt like a prophecy. She stepped into the rain. It soaked through her dress instantly, clinging to her swollen belly. The street shimmered, oily with runoff. She didn't look back, not at the door, not at the woman behind it. Across the street, a window blinked with motion. Just a shadow maybe. A curtain shifting. But she felt it. Someone was watching. She kept walking. She passed the mailbox with the rusted hinge, the sycamore tree that dropped leaves year-round. Her shoes, white canvas, stained at the toes, slapped against the sidewalk, water squishing. In each step, she had nowhere to go. She told herself she was free now, that this was her beginning. But the weight of that door closing, it followed her. A gust of wind pushed against her back like a shove. She crossed the street. The window was still now, just glass and lace. But her heart beat faster. There had been no, "I love you," no, "I'll miss you." Not even the cold decency of "be safe." Just the rattle of the drawer and the soft tremor of the teacup. The rain blurred the world around her, made it unreal. She wondered, in the strange quiet between the thunder, if maybe she hadn't left at all, just drifted into some parallel version of her life, one where everything looked the same but meant differently. She reached the corner before she cried, not a sob. Just a single broken inhale that caught at the top of her chest and stuck there. Her arms wrapped protectively over her stomach. The baby moved, a soft flutter. Like a knock, "You're not alone," it seemed to say, but she'd never felt more alone. In her life, behind her, the door stayed closed, But the curtain moved. She didn't see it just slightly, just once. But it moved. Inside the house, the mother leaned against the wall. Her knees had buckled after the girl left, but she hadn't let herself fall. Not all the way. She held the edge of the sink like a cliff's lip and stared at the rain. She told herself it was the right thing, that she had always done the right thing. Right things hurt more than wrong ones, that the drawer still sat ajar. Inside, a folded receipt with her daughter's due date circled in ink, a sonogram, and the letter, the one she'd written but never sent. Too many I'm sorries. Too many I just wanted to protect yous. She hadn't told her about the man. Not really. Or the choice she'd made to keep her daughter safe from what she herself hadn't escaped from soon enough. He said he loved her too, but men lie with flowers in their hands. If her daughter ever knew the truth, it would gut her. Or worse, it would make her forgive. And forgiveness, her mother knew, was a prison dressed up as Grace. She turned away from the window, picked up the teacup, washed it clean, dried it slow. Then placed it on the shelf with all the others. Porcelain graves of mornings that once meant peace. Across the street, a man shifted behind his curtain. He'd been told to wait. Not interfere. Just watch. But his fingers curled into fists at his sides. There was more to this than watching. And the girl was walking straight into a storm she didn't know existed. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. She didn't see her. Mother moved the curtain back, just slightly, just once. The first time she saw him. She was 15, standing barefoot on a broken tile in the kitchen, watching a man in a leather jacket hand her mother a sealed envelope. He didn't speak then either. Just nodded, turned, and vanished down the walk, his umbrella closed and dripping at his side like a blade. Now, 2 years later, rain soaked her down to the bones again, and there he was, this time with the umbrella open. He appeared like something summoned, not discovered. As if the storm itself had peeled back and offered him up. His coat was too thin for the weather, and his shoes, brown leather, cracked along the seams, were stained dark from the wet ground. But he didn't flinch. He stood at the mouth of the alley, just beyond the crooked lamppost, holding the umbrella out like a peace offering. Like maybe she hadn't just been exiled from the only home she'd ever known. Like maybe kindness still lived in the world, if only in the shadows. He didn't speak right away. That somehow made it feel safer. The wind pushed her hair across her face, slick with rain and breath and salt she wouldn't name. She didn't move toward him, not at first. She noticed his hands broad-knuckled, calloused, but still. Not curled in fists, not clenched with secrets. Just waiting. When he finally did speak, his voice was quiet. Dry, even in the storm. You'll get sick. It wasn't a question. Not pity, either. Just an observation from someone who'd been wet before. She stepped closer, not because she trusted him, but because the cold had gotten inside her skin. His umbrella was old. Black, frayed at the edges, and the handle worn to smooth wood. There was a small engraving near the base, almost rubbed out. Mum, she wondered who that was. Mother? Memory? He tilted it slightly, enough to share the shelter. She stepped under. Close. Enough now to smell the faint trace of tobacco and lavender. I'm not going home, she said. Her voice barely more than breath. I figured. His eyes were dark but not cruel. Tired, maybe. She recognized that kind of tired. The kind that lived behind the eyes, where no one could touch. He didn't ask questions. Not about the belly. The suitcase. The girl who shivered like someone left behind by more than just her mother. But she felt it. He was watching. Not in the way men on buses or street corners watch. But like someone counting puzzle pieces, waiting for one to fall into place. The umbrella creaked slightly in the wind. You have somewhere to go? He asked, after a pause. She almost laughed. Somewhere. Like that word still meant what it used. No. Another gust. She shifted the suitcase to her other hand. The strap had started to fray, and the plastic zipper tab had snapped off, replaced with a rusted paperclip, her mother's fix. Last minute, lazy. Still, she hadn't thrown it away. He glanced down at the suitcase. Then back up. There's a diner a few blocks that way, he said, nodding his chin west. They won't ask questions if you order something hot. She said nothing. He waited. Didn't push. And then slowly turned to walk. She followed. The umbrella only covered one of them fully, but he held it tilted toward her. His shoulder took the brunt of the rain. She thought about that. About how some people got soaked on purpose. The street was quiet. Just the slap of water against pavement and the faint hum of traffic from the highway. Her shoes squeaked. She hated that sound now. It felt loud. Exposed. She should have asked his name, but names felt heavy, like anchors tied. To ankles, they reached the diner in silence. Neon lights flickered in the fogged glass. Open 24 HRS. The red glow made everything look raw. Inside, the booths were cracked vinyl, the kind that stuck to the skin. The waitress was older, reading a gossip rag behind the counter. She didn't look up. The man sat across from her, peeling off his coat with practiced grace. She noticed then, he had a scar. Faint, diagonal, just under the jawline. Old. He caught her looking. Barbed wire fence, he said simply. She didn't ask more. He ordered coffee. She ordered toast. They sat. Rain tapped at the window like it wanted in. She wrapped her hands around the mug the waitress brought. Not coffee, just hot water. She hadn't said what she wanted. You always help strangers? She asked. No, that was it. A pause. Then softer, only some. She waited. The question hung between them. Why her? He didn't answer it. Not aloud, but he pulled something from his coat pocket. A coin, silver tarnished. He placed it on the table and slid it toward her. She looked at it. Picked it up. It was foreign, too smooth. Number. Country name. Just a single image. An umbrella stamped into metal. Her heart stuttered. You dropped it, he said. 2 years ago. Same corner. A chill moved through her that had nothing to do with the rain, but she'd never seen that coin before in her life. The toast came. She didn't eat. He reached for his cup. His hand shook slightly. A tremor. Like her mother's had when signing the hospital forms. She realized then, he wasn't just tired. He was sick or scared. And suddenly he wasn't just the man with the umbrella. He was a man with something to lose. That changed things. She wanted to ask again, who sent you? But instead she said, thank you. His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite not. Sometimes, he said, kindness is the only weapon left. She watched the rain outside. The street was empty now, but the feeling WASN single quotes to dot. There were 2 sets of footprints that day, hers and his, but one set was there. Before she arrived, I wrote you every week. I just never knew where to send them. The letters lived in a shoebox that once held off-brand sneakers her mother had bought on sale, a fact that clung like mildew to memory. The box stayed beneath her bed, pushed behind loose socks and half-folded sweaters, tucked like something shameful, though she never meant it to be. She started writing the night she was kicked out. The bus had barely pulled out of town. The windows sweated fog and diesel, and her hands trembled so hard the pen carved angry welts into the page. Dear Mom, she wrote, not because it felt right, but because not writing, it would have broken her completely. She never mailed the letter, didn't know where to send it, didn't think her mother would read it. But writing made the ache take shape, like bleeding on purpose. One letter became 2, then 17, then 30. Pages torn. From spiral notebooks, grocery receipts, hotel pads, the backs of junk mail. Some were tear-stained, some angry. One just said I miss you over and over, until the ink bled through. But none of them left the box. Years passed like bruises that never quite faded. And still, the box stayed, under beds, inside drawers. Once, even inside a floorboard, beneath. A board she pried up herself with a kitchen knife. The letters followed her wherever she went. Like ghosts. Like scars, and then, one day, one was gone. The lid had shifted slightly. The box wasn't where she left it. And a single letter written on yellow-lined paper, with the corner torn off, was missing. At first, she thought maybe she'd dropped it, that maybe it had slipped out during one of those late-night rereads, when she lay on the carpet with her knees tucked to her chest and her breath too tight to name. But she checked, and checked again. And something inside her said, no, someone took it, and it wasn't her. She didn't tell anyone. Just folded the lid tighter, wrapped the box in a faded pillowcase, and shoved it deeper under the bed. But now the words didn't feel safe anymore. They felt stolen. The man with the umbrella never asked about the letters. Never asked about the girl who sometimes stared at nothing for minutes at a time, her fingers curled like they still held a pen. But she saw him notice. Once, he touched the edge of the box while vacuuming. A tiny gesture, but his eyes lingered. She moved the box to the closet that night. But a week later, she found a new notebook on her bed, blue, clean, spiral-bound, with a pen tucked inside the coils. No note. No explanation. She didn't touch it. Instead, she opened the shoebox again and reread every word she'd ever written. 36 letters. All of them signed "Love, your daughter." Even the ones that didn't mean it. Even the ones that ended with "I hope you never find me." She stayed up all night reading them. The sun rose like an apology she couldn't accept. And then quietly, deliberately, she began to suspect something worse. What if her mother had been reading them all along? It wasn't just the missing page. It was the way she'd found that particular one gone. The only letter where she'd written about the baby. The one she lost. The one her mother never even asked about. And now that page was missing. She couldn't breathe right for a week, but it got worse. Because 3 months later, she was helping the man with the umbrella move furniture into the attic. He had arthritis now. Asked for help without quite asking. They carried up old crates and rusted fan blades and boxes of books that smelled like grief. He told her to leave the back room alone. Said it was just storage. She waited until he left. The drawer was stuck. She had to jimmy it open with the screwdriver he'd forgotten by the WINDOWSILL. And there, tucked beneath a folded scarf, was her letter, not a copy. Her letter creased the same way she'd folded it, back when her hands still shook too much to fold straight. It was the one about the baby. Her handwriting, her pain, her ink. She didn't scream. Didn't even move at first. Just sat on the attic floor, the scarf across her lap, the screwdriver rolling toward the wall. The silence cracked inside her like glass. When he came back, she was gone. She didn't run. She drifted, downstairs, through the hallway, into the kitchen where the kettle always whistled one note too sharp. She opened the cupboard where he kept the sugar. And behind it, taped to the inside wood panel, was another letter. Not hers. This one was old. Ink faded. The paper smelled like cedar and cigarettes. Dear Matthew, it read. I didn't know where to send this. She recognized the handwriting. It was his mother's. The letter was about guilt. About a child left behind. About a door closed in the wrong moment and never reopened. About silence becoming cement. And it ended with, if you ever find a girl like her, don't do what I did. Her knees buckled. She sat on the linoleum and cried for a stranger's regret. And suddenly, the man with the umbrella wasn't just her shelter. Was someone who had once been thrown away. Too, he didn't steal the letter to hurt her. He stole it because it was the only way he knew how to hold it. That didn't make it right, but it made it human. She put the letter back. Didn't confront him. Not yet. Sometimes the silence is louder than a fight. Later that week, he knocked softly on her door. held out a mug of tea with lemon and too much honey. Neither of them spoke, but she noticed. His eyes were red-rimmed, and on the table behind him, the blue notebook still sat, unopened. She never did ask how he got the letter, but she started writing. Again. This time. The letters didn't start with "Dear Mom." They started with no name at all, and she wrote them like someone who finally knew what it meant to be read. If justice still matters. You'll want the next page. She finds her words years later, in a drawer that wasn't hers. She used to watch her daughter sleep from the hallway, arms crossed, door barely cracked. Even then, it felt like standing outside a life she no longer belonged to. The street was quiet now. Always was this time of evening. The light was just right, the kind that flattened color, smeared edges, made everything seem softer than it really was. She stood behind the lace curtain, 2 fingers holding it back, her breath shallow. Not because she was afraid. Because this was ritual. 3 houses down, the porch light flicked on. She's home. She'd said she didn't care. Told every neighbor, every friend, every echo of her husband's name. She made her choice. She left, said it cold, said it sharp. But she knew every address, tracked them like postmarks. She moved the pins on the map in her drawer whenever her daughter moved again. 3 cities in 5 years, new names on mailboxes. New keys, same silence. There was no contact. That was the deal. But silence doesn't mean distance. It started with a newspaper clipping, an award her daughter got at some community college in Dayton. Then a blurry photo someone tagged on Facebook. A whisper from the churchwoman with too many opinions and too few boundaries. Each piece went into the file. Scrapbook, floral cover, plastic sleeves. Labels and pencil. She kept it under her bed, beneath an old quilt she never washed because it still smelled like him, the father. The first one to leave. Sometimes she told herself she was documenting it for closure. But truth? She needed to know if her daughter was okay, even if she said otherwise, even if she told herself otherwise, even if she watched her through the window like a stranger. The girl moved again, 2 months ago, to this quiet lane with rain-streaked gutters and paint-chipped mailboxes, and one stray cat that roamed the fences like it owned the world. The mother followed a week later. Different side of the street. Curtains thick enough to veil her. The lace was a gift once. Wedding shower, back when everything still glittered with maybe. She cut it herself, hemmed it by hand. Hung it in this new house like an apology no one asked for. Every evening, she stood behind it. Watching, hoping. Not praying. Just watching. The daughter walked like her father's shoulders tense. Eyes on the ground, always calculating. She never looked toward the window, never glanced back, but then one day she did, just for a second. A flicker. Barely a pause, but enough. The mother stepped back instinctively, as if the curtain burned. Heart pounding, breath catching. Like guilt. Had physical weight, but the girl turned away again. Unmoved. Maybe she hadn't seen. Maybe she had. 2 days later, the scrapbook was gone. She turned the mattress upside down. Checked the quilt folds. Even lifted the baseboards. Nothing. Gone. And she knows. There was no other explanation. She sat in the kitchen for hours that night. No TV, no tea. Just stillness, the kind that presses in. Makes your skin feel too tight. There was a photo in that book when no one was supposed to see. A photo of her daughter at 5, sitting on the back step, clutching a cracked plastic teacup. One hand bruised. She always told herself it was an accident, that memory bends, that kids fall. But something in that photo said otherwise, and she'd kept it anyway. Because even shame needs proof. She used to think keeping track made her a better mother, even if it was in secret, even if it was behind a window. But now she wasn't sure. She walked the hallway, fingertips trailing the wallpaper seams. The house creaked like it remembered something she didn't. In the linen closet, behind The towels was the shoebox. The real one. Letters. Unsent. Not from the daughter. From her. Dozens. Maybe more. Written every birthday. Every Christmas. Every night the guilt swallowed her whole, and she needed something to hold on to. Dear Ava, she always wrote. Then something simple. A memory, a promise. A lie she wanted to believe. She never mailed them. Never. Dared. But now, she wondered, would it have changed anything? Would one letter have been enough? Or was she always too late? The next evening, the curtain stayed closed. She didn't watch. She sat instead, hands folded, the shoebox in her lap, and thought about how obsession always hides behind righteousness, and how control wears many faces. But the photo hid something worse. Her hands trembled when she picked up the top letter. Not because of what she wrote, but because of what she'd never said. She was proud. That was the problem. Pride became silence. Silence became distance. Distance became punishment. She called it boundaries, but really, it was fear. Fear that if she reached out, she'd be refused. Fear that her daughter didn't need her anymore. Fear that what was broken couldn't be fixed. That night, she opened her front door. Left it ajar. Just an inch. She didn't expect anything. Didn't expect footsteps or forgiveness. Just wanted it open. In case. 2 days later, the scrapbook returned. No note. No explanation. Just placed on the porch swing. Wrapped in the same quilt it had once hidden beneath. One photo missing. The one with the teacup. In its place, a folded napkin. Drawing. A child's drawing. Stick figures. 2, holding hands. One with curls. One with a heart drawn over the chest. The mother sat on the swing, quilt in her lap. As the wind picked up, she didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just watched the window, across the street. And whispered a name she hadn't spoken. In years. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. She moved 3 times before realizing her mother had always known where she was. We don't interfere, but we see everything. She remembered the night the tape was dropped at her door, the way the envelope felt thick and heavy like a confession. The neighbors spoke in murmurs after that, shifting in their chairs, pointing at curtains, leaning forward when she walked by. She carried the VHS inside with gloves on, the plastic case streaked from rain. On the front was a handwritten label, May 4th, 2000. No name. No explanation. Just the date. She set it on the dining table, beside the chipped salt shaker shaped like a kitten, her mother's favorite. She hated the salt shaker now. Hated the way it watched her from the shelf, unblinking. The tape's grainy black and white image flickered on the old VCR. Static crackled. The woman next door, Mrs. Halloway, paced outside on the porch, a single bare bulb illuminating her bent frame. She pressed her cheek to the glass and watched. In the video, her mother stood in the backyard, sun low in the sky, the baby her held tight against a stained dress. Her daughter's eyes weren't visible. The camera angle was over the shoulder. The mother rocked, whispered something. The baby still. She rewound, watched again. The baby's hand rose, touched the mother's cheek. A slow-motion tenderness she never saw in real life. But the mother's eyes empty, not loving. Watching something else. The neighbor, Mrs. Halloway, carried the camcorder that day. She'd offered to record a family picnic. Something about wanting proof everyone was fine. She ended up leaving the tape, thrusting it into her hands with a trembling finger and instructions to watch alone. She watched. The date, May 4th, was her 4th birthday. The party in the yard, balloons lost in sun. A cake half melted. Laughter in the background, but her mother said nothing. No happy birthday. Just rocking, whispering, staring. She paused the playback, pressed her thumbs against her eyes. She could taste heat. This neighbor, Mrs. Drew, was known for gossip. Her binoculars, hidden in a drawer, had filmed her placing the tape. The community whispered, We don't interfere, but we see everything. That night, the daughter stood on the porch, the VHS box clutched to her chest like a newborn. The front door clicked shut and the neighbors behind lace curtains turned back to their own quiet lives. No one knocked. No one called. She left the tape on her own table. Days passed. She didn't speak of it. Didn't ask why Mrs. H had handed over the tape or why she'd filmed her mother so intently. She just watched, over and over, her mother's lips moving, her arms trembling until the tape went silent. Just static. Mrs. Halloway knocked once, early morning, before the sun. The old woman's voice shook when she spoke. "I thought you should know," she said, holding tight to the screen door. "I thought she'd left you, but she never really did." The daughter didn't ask what she meant. She let Mrs. H come in, sit at the edge of the couch, hands twisting the hem of her cardigan. "I saw her after that day," she said. "Your mother, by the creek, watching, with someone else's child." Her eyes flicked toward the VCR, then back. "I thought... You should know." She didn't say who or why. She just left the words hanging. The daughter's throat tightened. She thought of the salt shaker, kitten ears chipped. She thought of how her mother had carried her, how her baby hand had touched cheek, how close they had been for a moment, and how that moment had shattered. She carried Mrs. H to the door. Didn't offer tea, didn't hug. Just let her go, later. She sat by the window, the VHS replaying scenes she'd memorized. Each flicker brought something new. A bruise on her mother's arm, a glance to the camera, a small lip quiver as the birthday song cracked. She realized the mother's silence in the video was shame, not love, not absence. She felt anger. Then something smaller, pity. How many years had her mother watched her? How many frames of life she missed because she couldn't speak, couldn't hold? This town had seen, stored every secret, talked in quiet tones over hedges and fences. But the daughter realized that seeing isn't the same as knowing. She walked to the mantel, lifted the salt shaker, set it on the table beside the tape. The public and private colliding in the light of late afternoon. The phone rang. It startled her, harsh, disconnected. She stared at the receiver, then picked it up. No voice, just breathing. Then click, she dropped it back, heart still racing. But the call hadn't been empty. It carried something, it carried intent. She pulled the tape from the player, held it like a heart, then slid it into the envelope again, sealed, no return address. She walked outside, evening shadows long. Placed it on Mrs. H's porch. No knock, no note, just the tape, waiting. She returned home, past her own lace curtain, drawn tight. She looked through it, as her mother had. But there was no one on the street, only the empty porch swing, the lingering echo of a life under lens. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. "I thought she'd left you," the neighbor said. But she never really did. The mirror in the upstairs hallway was old and a little warped. When the child stood in front of it, her reflection bent at the edges, like the past trying to seep through. She liked to stare into it, chin tilted, lips parted just slightly, like the women in the black and white photos tucked into boxes upstairs. She didn't know why it felt like memory lived there, only that it did. The girl was 8. Her hair was too long, always in her eyes. She chewed her sleeves until they frayed. And she didn't speak much, except when she did, and then it was sharp, disarming. Like lightning in a quiet room. That morning, she'd climbed into the attic while her mother was still asleep. The door creaked so loud it made her wince, but she kept going. Dust hung in slats of light. The floor groaned under her socks. The boxes weren't labeled. But she found the one that mattered. A shoebox wrapped in a kitchen towel, the kind with embroidered chickens. Inside, photographs with curled edges, Polaroids of birthdays, faces half-cropped, and names. Always in her grandmother's handwriting, tight, angular, ink faded in places. But sharp where it mattered. She found a photo of her mother, age 16, holding a duffel bag. Not smiling, her shoulders square. Standing just outside a brick house she didn't recognize. A line of text on the back, June 13th, she left. Or I made her. The girl didn't understand what it meant, but she felt the weight. She reached deeper and pulled out a smaller box, taped along the sides. Inside, a VHS tape marked only by a date, 6.130. It meant nothing to her, not yet. But she held it like it did. Downstairs, she waited until her mother left for groceries. Then she slid the tape into the player, the machine wheezing like it hadn't breathed in years. Static, then a picture. A living room, this house but emptier. Her grandmother stood in the frame, pacing. Young then, maybe mid-40s. Her eyes were sharp even in grainy footage. She was yelling, but the tape had no sound. Behind her, the front door stood open. The camera jerked, caught a blur of a girl, her mother stepping backward, clutching her belly. Then gone. The grandmother turned to the camera. Her mouth moved, slowly, 3 syllables. The girl replayed it again and again. She couldn't hear the words, but she knew what they were. You are dead. She stopped the tape. Later at dinner she said nothing. Just pushed peas around on her plate. Her mother watched her too closely. You okay? Her mother asked, Do I have a grandmother? She asked. The fork in her mother's hand froze mid-air. You ... Did, she said. She's gone. Where? Her mother didn't answer. Just stood, scraped her plate into the sink, and ran water too hot for her hands. The child went back upstairs. To the mirror. That night while brushing her teeth, she saw something, a flicker behind her shoulder. Not movement. A shape. She turned fast. Nothing, but her chest hurt after. Like something had passed through her. She didn't sleep well. The attic creaked again. Only it wasn't her this time. The next day, she went back into the box, dug deeper. Found a locket with no chain, just the pendant, its hinge rusted shut. She pried it open with her fingernail. Inside, a photo of a baby, and behind it, the same date. 6.130, her mother's face, newborn eyes. A second slot was empty, as if meant for another picture. She didn't show her mother. Instead, she slipped the locket into her school coat pocket and carried it with her like a secret. Touched it during spelling tests, during the bus ride home. She imagined the baby in the locket staring back at her. Not crying. Just watching. One day, she stopped outside the house after school. Didn't go in. Just stared up at the window above. The porch, the one with the mirror. She saw something again. The curve of a woman's silhouette. But her mother was still at work. She blinked. It was gone. She told her teacher the next day that she thought she was being watched. By who? The teacher asked. I don't know, she said. But she has my eyes. That night, she waited until her mother was in the bath. Then crept to the living room and pulled the tape from the player. She slid it under her bed. She didn't know why she did it, only that her mother shouldn't watch it. Again, later, her mother stood in the doorway of her bedroom. She didn't come in. Just leaned there. Did you go into the attic again? The girl shrugged. I was looking for books. Her mother stared at her too long. There's nothing in that attic worth keeping, she said. But you kept it. What? You kept the tape. Her mother's voice went quiet. You watched it? The girl nodded. She was screaming. Her mother didn't move. You said she was gone, the girl whispered. But I think she's still here. Her mother sank onto the edge of the bed. She looked small. I left because I had to, she said. Not because I wanted to. No, you don't. She reached over and brushed the girl's hair from her face. Her hand trembled. She said I ruined her life, she whispered. But I think she knew I'd live one without her. They didn't talk after that. Not about the attic. Not about the tape, But sometimes the girl saw her mother stand by the window and look toward the street like she was waiting for someone who never rang the bell. But the bell had rung once, when the girl was 4. Her mother never answered it. The locket stayed in her coat. She never wore it. Just touched it. Then one evening, when the wind was loud and the mirror kept rattling in its frame, the girl turned and saw it clear a face. Watching her, pale, familiar, she ran downstairs. Found her mother holding a mug of tea she hadn't sipped. Her knuckles white. "I saw her," the girl whispered. She was watching us again. Sometimes her mother would stand by the sink with her back turned and just whisper her own name. Like she was trying to remember who she used to be. The girl had started shrinking into her own silence by then. Not out of fear, but out of watching, measuring. She learned early that words were dangerous, that the space between them held more truth than anything spoken out loud. So she collected them like sharp stones, kept them in her pockets, waited. She was 11 when she realized her mother was lying. Not in the big ways, not in the dramatic, door-slamming, finger-pointing ways, but in the quiet ones. The way she said, "I'm fine," without blinking. The way she said, "That's all in the past," when her hands trembled. The way she said, "It wasn't like that," whenever the girl found another photo in the attic, another object tucked away too carefully to be meaningless. That spring, she found the earring, one earring, gold, a thin hoop with a pearl, just big enough to catch light. It was wrapped in a tissue and hidden inside an envelope, under the lining of an old coat in the hall closet. She held it in her hand for a long time, then slipped it into her desk drawer without asking. Her mother didn't wear earrings, hadn't in years. One morning the girl noticed her mother's ear had a scar, a torn piercing. She wondered when that had happened and why only one. She stopped asking questions. But silence wasn't peace. It was a slow burning. School became background. Noise, friends faded. She kept her grades just high enough not to worry anyone. Her teachers said she was quiet but capable. No one asked why she flinched at loud noises, or why she kept glancing over her shoulder. At home, dinner turned to routine. 2 plates. One question, "How was your day?" One answer, "Fine." Her mother always said it first. The girl always echoed it, but the attic kept breathing. Sometimes late at night, she'd hear the boards creak. Not like footsteps, more like settling, like the house remembering. She'd hold the locket in her hand under the covers. No chain still, just the metal against her palm, warm with fear. She never put the photo of herself inside it. Just the one of her mother. Then one night, she heard her mother crying in the bathroom, not loud, not broken. Just this strange, muffled sound like trying not to exist too hard. The girl sat on the floor outside the door, knees pulled to her chest. She didn't say anything, just stayed. The next morning, her mother said she had the flu. "I'm just tired," she added. "Too much overtime." "You don't like your job," the girl said. Her mother paused, then laughed. "But not really." "Doesn't matter if I like it. It keeps us here." "Here where?" That shut the conversation down. But the girl had seen the job listings on the printer, 3 states away. A new name filled in on one. The fight came 2 days later. It was small at first. Something about chores, a missing dish towel. But it grew fast, like it had been waiting. Her mother's voice rose, sharp-edged and desperate. "Why do you look at me like that?" she snapped. "Like what?" "Like I'm a stranger." "You are." Silence. Then the sound of the fridge door opening too hard. Her mother muttered something under her breath. "What did you say?" The girl asked. "Nothing. You said I'm just like her." Her mother's back stiffened. Then she turned slowly. Her face cracked open, something raw behind her eyes. "Sometimes," she said, "you are." That landed like a slap. Not because it was loud, because it was true. The girl stepped back. Her hand went to her pocket. "I found your earring." Her mother blinked. "What?" "You kept it." Her mother closed her eyes. Sat down at the table like her legs had given out. She tore it out. She said, barely audible, "The day I told her I was pregnant." She ripped it straight through. Said I didn't deserve anything she gave me. She touched her earlobe, almost absent-mindedly. I bled on the floor, and she told me to clean it up. The girl didn't speak. She just stared. Because something in her had cracked too, but it wasn't sympathy. It was clarity. Her mother wiped her face. "You don't understand what it means to leave." "I understand what it means to stay," the girl whispered. There it was again. The reversal. Pride turned to shame. Anger to something more fragile. Her mother stood, gripping the edge of the counter. "You want to go?" she asked. "Is that what this is? I don't know. Because if you go, don't expect me to chase you." "I didn't ask you to." The silence after that was thick, but not unfamiliar. Then the girl said, quietly, "You lied to me." "I was protecting you." "No, you were protecting yourself." Her mother's eyes went sharp, then dull. "Don't make the same mistake I did. I already have." Her mother stepped back like she'd been pushed. The door was open, not wide, but enough. The girl turned toward it, took one step, and stopped. Behind her, her mother whispered, "I'm not her." The girl didn't turn around. "Neither am I." She stood there a long time, watching the open air, listening to her own breath, waiting for something to pull her back. Nothing did. She didn't leave that night. But something left inside her, later. In bed, she took the locket and laid it on her chest. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. But when she finally opened her mouth, just once, in the dark, she repeated her grandmother's words without realizing it. "What you lock away finds its way back." It had rained that day, like it always seemed to when things shifted. That particular kind of rain that didn't fall hard but soaked everything anyway. The kind that made silence feel thicker, rooms feel smaller, and memories swell like wet wood. She was supposed to be packing. Her mother had said they might move. "Fresh start," she'd muttered, tossing a box into the hallway. "We don't need half this stuff anyway." But in the back room, the girl, almost grown now, found the desk. It wasn't hers. It had been there for as long as she could remember. Scratched cherry wood, a brass keyhole that had never worked. She'd tried as a child, using paper clips, hairpins, even a plastic spoon once. Nothing ever turned. Her mother always said it was jammed. "Just old junk," she'd shrugged. Nothing worth the effort. But that day, she looked at it differently. Maybe it was the way the light hit the side, revealing a set of fingerprints in dust. Maybe it was the quiet. Or maybe finally something inside her stopped listening to the lies. She reached for her mother's purse. She didn't know why. It was instinct. A flicker in the gut. The same way animals sense storms long before they come. In the lining of the bag, near the torn seam her mother had stitched shut with dental floss, something clicked under her fingertips. Small, cold, a key. It fit like it had been waiting for her. The drawer creaked open with the sound of something forgotten remembering itself. Inside, papers yellowed at the edges. A folded letter, brittle with time. A photograph, grainy, soft, but unmistakable. A man with an umbrella and a certificate. Not hers. Not her mother's. A birth certificate. She sat on the floor, legs tucked beneath her, the desk yawning open like a mouth mid-confession. Her fingers hovered over the letter first. But it was the photograph that caught her. The umbrella was red. Bright, impossible red. The same as the one she'd seen in her dreams. The man held it over a young girl's head, her mother. Barely 18, pregnant. But he wasn't a stranger. She knew that jawline, that slant of shoulder, that scar near the temple. She'd seen him in another photo, slipped between the pages of an old book last summer. Her mother had snatched it away before she could ask. "Wrong photo," she'd said. Flustered. Wrong lie. The letter was dated 2 weeks before her mother left home. It wasn't addressed to anyone, just words. Like someone needed to write them, even if no one ever read them. "I loved him." I never said it out loud. Not once. He made it easy to believe someone would stay. I ruined that. I ruined everything. And now I have to become someone else. For her. She never know. She folded it back up carefully. The ink had bled in. Some places, water damage maybe. Or tears. But the certificate, that was the real wound. It wasn't her name printed at the top. It was someone else's. A girl who would have been born a year before her. Same last name, different father. But the box beside father's name was typed. The man with the umbrella. She didn't remember breathing. Just the sound of her pulse in her ears. Loud, unforgiving. Her mother called down the hall. "You okay?" She tucked everything back into the drawer and shut it quietly. Locked it again. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. She looked at herself. In the hallway mirror later, hands braced against the wall like she was trying not to fall through it. Who was she if every story told to her was built on ash? Later that night, she waited until her mother fell asleep on the couch, TV still on, wine glass untouched. She stood over her for a long time, just watching. The lines on her face had deepened. Her mouth twitched in sleep. A silent apology maybe. Or a buried scream. She thought of asking, but she already knew the shape of her mother's denial. Smooth. Practiced, full of just enough truth to stall the full collapse. So instead, she whispered, "Why him?" and left it unanswered. But the photo hid something worse. On the back, in faint pencil, "For the girl you'll never let me meet." She walked out to the porch and let the rain hit her bare arms. The red umbrella she remembered now. Not a dream, a memory. A man standing across the street when she was 6, watching, smiling gently. Her mother had pulled her away too fast. Said it was nothing. Nothing had a name. Nothing had a face. Nothing had followed them from town to town. Never. Close enough to threaten, but never far enough to forget. She thought about the locked drawer. About how easy it had been to turn the key once she knew where to look, and what else was waiting. She returned to her room and pulled out the box where she kept the locket. The pearl earring, the receipt with the faded number she'd once found tucked behind a mirror. Puzzle pieces. They didn't fit yet, but they were from the same picture. She took out the envelope from the drawer and placed it among them. "Tomorrow," she would ask, not gently. Not like a daughter seeking warmth, but like a woman who knew too much to stay. Quiet, and her mother would flinch and stall and maybe cry, but the drawer had already been opened. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. The man who rescued her was never a stranger. She dials the number she swore she'd never call. The rotary phone sat on a dusty shelf in the garage, red, heavy, out of place, like something from another life. The cord had been wound around its base too tightly, the plastic biting into itself. She remembered it from her childhood kitchen, back when her mother's heels clicked against tile like gunshots. It had a sound, the dial clicking back. A rhythm like a heartbeat. She wiped her thumb across the dial and wondered if her mother ever did the same. Wondered if hands just know what they once hated. For days the number had burned at the edge of her memory. She had almost called once at 13, once again at 20, and then at 29, pregnant and alone. The receiver trembling in her hand but never through. Now in her 35th year, with the drawer open and the photograph burned into her mind. She sat cross-legged on the cold garage floor, staring at the thing that never forgot. She dialed slowly. 1. Pause. 2. Pause. Her finger hesitated at the 0. That pause was old. Inherited. It rang. Once. Twice. Then a voice, cracked like an old window. "I knew you'd call." She didn't speak. "It's time," the woman said. No apology. No sob, just that her throat burned. Time for what? A breath. To come home. "There's something you need to see before I die." She nearly laughed. Home? But the way the voice said it, fragile, rehearsed, afraid, made her stomach twist. It wasn't bait. It was something else. The last page of a letter never sent. "I don't know if I care," she whispered. The line crackled. "Then come just to look. After that, you can leave me to rot." She hung up without saying goodbye, but she didn't leave the garage. She sat beside the red phone for a long time, fingers pressed to her lips, the silence louder now. That night, she dreamt of the man with the umbrella again. Only this time, he stood in front of a burning house, holding a photograph that crumbled in the wind. Morning brought no clarity, just motion. She packed a bag without thinking, each shirt folded too neatly, like grief performed. At the last moment, she tucked the photograph inside a book of pressed flowers her daughter had made in second grade. A hiding place. As if truth could be. Contained. The drive stretched like regret, long, flat, without music. She kept the window cracked, just enough for wind to sting her eyes. The town looked the same until it didn't. Fences lower, houses smaller, everything more tired than remembered. Childhood home had the same mailbox, bent, still with her father's name peeled halfway off. That wound never healed either. She parked but didn't cut the engine. She half hoped. No one would answer, but the door opened before she knocked, as if the old woman had been waiting behind it. Hand on the knob for years, she looked smaller now. Bones close to the skin, the kind of old that made you flinch. Not fragile, unfinished. A face carved too sharply by time. No hug. No welcome. Just upstairs, third drawer. Don't force it. The living room smelled like rain trapped in wood. Wallpaper curling at the corners. Her old piano still in the corner, missing the D-sharp key. That echo in her chest again, ghost notes she used to play to drown out shouting. She climbed the stairs slowly, each step a year she didn't come back. At the top, the hallway felt darker, smaller, the air thick with old perfume and secrets. The third drawer was stuck. Of course it was. She pulled gently. Nothing. A little harder. Still stuck. She knelt and traced the wood. A faint line where it had been glued shut. Someone had locked the truth inside on purpose. She pried her nail under the edge, and the drawer gave a reluctant groan. Inside, a birth certificate yellowed. By time. Her name, but not the date she knew. A photograph. Not of her. Of him. The man with the umbrella, younger. No umbrella this time. Just him beside her mother, both unsmiling, standing in front of a courthouse, and a letter. Folded, unfolded, folded again. She sat on the carpet. The floorboards beneath her creaked like old bones. Her hands trembled as she opened the letter. To the daughter I lost before I met her. A breath caught in her throat. I wanted you. I want you still. But wanting wasn't enough in this house. She told me you'd be safer without me, that she'd protect you if I left. I believed her. That was my sin. But the photo hid something. Worse, the handwriting wasn't the man's. It was her mother's, signed at the bottom in ink. She recognized from childhood field trip forms. She went back to the birth certificate. There, to her mother's pen, her mother's lie. The man who left. Never wanted to. She sat for a long time, letter in one hand, photograph in the other. Then came the footsteps behind her. Slow, not sneaky. Just tired. The old woman leaned against the doorframe. He wrote it. I just copied it. His hands were shaking too badly. Silence. Then, a confession. I didn't think he was strong enough to stay. And I wasn't strong enough to let him try. The daughter didn't speak. He came. Every year on your birthday, the old woman said. Umbrella or not, I never let him close. An image flickered in her memory once, at 6. A man standing across the street under an umbrella, just watching. Her mother said it was a stranger. Love inverted into fear. Protection turned into possession. The daughter's voice cracked. Why now? The old woman sat down in the hall. Because the body gives warnings, and mine's been screaming. A coughing fit gripped her, and for a moment, she looked like a woman trying to hold back the tide with bare hands. I thought you'd hate him, the old woman rasped. That if I could. Make you believe he never cared, it'd hurt less. But lies rot. Even the good ones. A long silence, then softly. He died last year. I didn't tell you. I didn't know how. She curled her fingers around the photo until the edges bit into her skin. Grief twisted into something unnameable. A rope burned too long. Outside, a wind picked up. A storm forming. You want me to forgive you? The daughter asked. No, I want you to bury me knowing the whole story. Even if it ruins what's left. She stood. The hallway light flickered. She didn't say goodbye, didn't promise return. But she didn't slam the door. She walked past the piano, past the torn curtains, down the steps with the memory of the man beside her. Not above her. She opened the book of pressed flowers and slid the letter inside. Beside the photo. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. On the drive home, she left. The window opened wider this time. Rain came in, wetting her sleeve, her lap. But she didn't close it. She stopped at a red light. Her eyes flicked to the passenger seat. And they're soaked. Curling at the edges, the letter pulsed faintly in the breeze. There's something you need to see before I die. The first time she heard the basement door creak open, she was 7. She'd spilled nail polish on the living room rug, her mother's favorite white one. The one no one was allowed to step on unless they were bleeding. There had been a silence. Longer than punishment, and then that sound, hinges groaning, like a throat holding back words. That basement door. Now, 26 years later, she was standing in front of it again. Same brass knob, same splintered frame. The house smelled like mothballs and shame. It hadn't changed, only calcified. She hadn't told anyone she was coming back, not even Daniel. She'd parked 2 streets over. The curtains twitched on. The second floor, like someone had been watching. But when she entered, the house gave no resistance. No alarm, no voice. Just the hush of ghosts caught mid-breath. 1 step. She tested the first stair, remembering how her mother used to snap, never down there. 2 steps. The bulb above her buzzed weakly, casting light like old milk. She held her breath with each creak, half expecting a voice from the dark to call her by the name she hadn't used in years. 3A. Framed picture still hung by the stairs, her 4th grade class photo. She was the only one not smiling. Back then, she'd believed being unloved meant being unlovable. E.4. The air thickened. Dust bloomed with each movement, curling into her lungs. It smelled like rust and secrets. 5. The silence got louder. 6. She reached the basement floor. Concrete, damp. There were still boot prints in the dust, like someone had been here recently. A workbench stood against the far wall, cluttered with old tools and a faded coffee mug that said "World's Okayest Mom." She stared at it. Then she noticed the box. It sat in the corner, beneath a moth-eaten tarp. No label, no lock. Just wood, warped. With time, edges chewed by mice or memory. She knew somehow it was meant for her, but the box hid something worse than abandonment. Her hand hovered over the lid. She remembered her mother's voice, flat, cold, surgical. Some things are better. Buried, she opened it. A small velvet pouch. An envelope yellowed with time. A toy spoon, the kind used for dollhouses. And beneath it all, wrapped in plastic, a lock of honey blonde hair. Her throat closed. She recognized the curl. She'd cut it herself, that day in the hospital. Her daughter had been swaddled in blue knot. Pink because they'd run out, but she'd laughed anyway. That first curl, that was theirs. Her and Lily. She'd thought her mother never came to see her. that she'd cut her out completely. But someone had saved this. Held it close. Her hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside, a photo of her and Lily, taken from a distance. Outside the shelter, grainy, Lily was 3, holding a red balloon. There was writing on the back, "You are still mine." She staggered back, hitting the workbench. A wrench fell with a clatter that sounded like a scream. Her breath shortened. She hadn't been alone. All those years, someone had followed. Someone had watched. She grabbed the pouch and spilled it into her palm. A key, small, brass, and familiar. The attic. The attic was her mother's true confession booth. She climbed back up, 2 steps at a time, the box tucked under her arm. Her mother's voice echoed in her skull, not the words, but the silences. The withholding dot at the top. The attic door loomed like a held-in sob. The key slid in easy. It smelled of cedar and cold paper, stacks of journals, boxes labeled by year. And in the far corner, a single chair facing the window, a baby blanket folded neatly across its arm. The one she'd made in 8th grade home, EC. The initials still stitched, LH, but the journals, those were the real weight. She opened the one from 2009, the year she ran. The first page was blank. Then, "She will hate me for this, but at least she'd be safe." Every page after was a long prayer, scratched in ink, some with tear blots, others in shaky half-cursive. The pages curled like they, too, were ashamed. She turned to the final one. Her mother's handwriting was frail now. "I watched her grow a backbone in exile. But I held her baby's hair every night like it was a rosary. Forgive me. Or don't. But no, I never stopped looking." She clutched the page like it could bleed truth into her. But the photo hid something. Worse. She looked again. Behind her and Lily, a shadow. A man in the distance. Umbrella tilted, watching. The same man who'd saved her once. He hadn't been a stranger. The basement hadn't just been storage. It had been surveillance. And love hadn't been absent. It had been ... twisted. She sank into the chair, the lock of hair still clutched in her fist. The journals surrounding her like mourners. Every story she'd told herself about being discarded. Unloved, forgotten, shattered in that room. Not unloved. Obsessed over ... tracked, ... protected maybe. But never free. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. The window pane rattled in the wind. The red balloon from the photo floated by no string. No anchor. She opened the box again. And found her own baby teeth. Some truths kill the liar first. The first thing she noticed was her mother's voice. It had changed. Softer, frayed at the edges like an old sweater unraveled by time. Not fragile, no. Her mother was never fragile, but hollowed. There was a room inside it now. Empty, echoing. They sat across from each other in the old parlor, 2 shadows cast by the same wound. The same teacups, the same chipped china saucer with the lipstick mark still ghosting the rim. Years of silence thick between them, steeped like the overbrewed tea. Her mother didn't reach out, didn't smile. Just stared at her daughter as if memorizing a face she'd already buried. He was never supposed to stay, her mother said, eyes fixed on the clock. The clock on the mantel had stopped the night she left. The woman didn't speak. Not yet. Let the silence wrap around them like smoke. Let it sting. A gust rattled the stained glass window. The colors bled over her mother's face, a mosaic of bruised blues and bloodlight. She almost looked human in that wash. "When you were 17, her mother continued, "there was a man." The daughter closed her eyes. She knew. Of course she knew. She'd known the moment the voice on the phone said, "It's time." Not time for forgiveness. Time for excavation. "I made a choice," her mother said. "You call it betrayal. I called it survival." The woman said nothing. Her fingers traced the rim of the saucer, found the old lipstick mark. Same brand. Same crimson shade her mother wore the night she was kicked out. But her mother had stopped wearing lipstick years ago. So why was the stain fresh? He wanted something from me. From you, she swallowed. Her pulse ached in her throat. And I gave it, her mother said. To save you. The room tilted. The woman placed the saucer down, slowly, precisely. It clicked against the table like a trigger. I didn't know he'd follow you. That HED pretend. Her mother blinked. Once. Hard. I thought I was sending protection. I didn't know I was delivering harm. Another silence. This one louder. Her daughter watched the sun shift on the wall, striping the wallpaper. Into bars. What did you trade? My pride. That never seemed in short supply. Her mother flinched. Barely. But it was there. A flicker in the eye, like a light catching a crack. And something else, her mother added. I gave him your name. A name is not a gift. It is a target. The woman stood, walked to the sideboard. Her fingers drifted over the photo frames, each one holding ghosts with eyes too hollow. Then she found it a small wooden box, tucked. Behind a vase of dead lavender. You kept this? Always. Inside the box, a ribbon, faded blue. A hospital bracelet. A torn envelope addressed in her childlike scrawl. To Mommy when I am gone. And beneath it all, a curl of golden hair. Her daughter looked up slowly. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but recognition. Whose is this? Yours. The mother said, from your first haircut. You cried and screamed like the world was ending. The daughter held the lock gently, reverently. Memory wrapped in protein and time. It didn't make sense. If I was just ... Thrown out, she said. Why keep this? The mother didn't answer. She looked tired. No stripped. Because I never stopped watching, she whispered. I never stopped checking if you were alive. Echo motif. That same whisper she'd heard behind the door as a child. Always thought it was prayer. Maybe it was guilt, the daughter lowered. The ribbon, her voice cracked. Why not reach out? Why not tell the truth then? Her mother looked away. Out the window, into the dusk. Because if I opened the door, she said, he might follow. There it was. Not pride. Not cruelty. Fear, the kind that keeps you silent. The kind that names your child collateral damage. And now? The mother's jaw worked. Her hands shook as she reached beneath her chair and pulled out a small black drive. Now, he knows you know. Silent setup. The USB. A recording? A contract? A map? The daughter took it with a trembling hand. Why give it to me now? Because I don't have much time. She sat back down. Her body felt heavier than it had in years. The tea had gone cold. The lipstick mark glared up at her. He lied to me too, her mother said. He said he'd leave you alone if I gave him what he wanted. But monsters don't honor deals. They devour them. The woman studied the drive. Its weight was nothing. Its meaning was everything. Why now? She asked again. Her mother looked straight into her. No makeup, no mask, because he called me. That stopped her breath. 3 days ago. Said he wanted to finish what we started. The daughter stood slowly. Her legs numb. But her mother didn't look afraid of him. She looked afraid of what her daughter would become. She walked to the door. Her fingers brushed the wood, the same frame she'd once clung to, begging to be let back in. If I use this, she asked, do I become like you? Her mother didn't answer, but her silence screamed. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. I sent him to find you, ... Her mother finally whispered, but I never thought he'd stay. The first. Memory was a pink dress, sun-washed, torn at the hem. She was 4, hiding under the table while her mother screamed upstairs. Her grandmother sat at the kitchen counter, drinking tea that smelled like burnt flowers. No one came to check on her. No one called her name. Now the house smells the same. Mothballs, lemon floor polish. A touch of something rotting beneath the floorboards, but the voices are quiet. Only the creak of the door as she pushes it open. Her daughter follows, fingers wrapped tight around a worn rabbit with one missing eye. The grandmother stands in the hall, still, as if carved from the wall itself. The mother, middle of 3 generations, stares at her own hands. There is no reunion. No embrace, only a cough. A nod. A step sideways to make room. Silence can swell like water. They sit around the same kitchen table, each on a different edge. No one speaks. The kettle is full, but no one turns on the stove. The curtains are still yellow, though time has dimmed them to the color of nicotine. Dust floats in the air like held breath. The child places the rabbit on the table, stares at the grandmother, stares long and hard, the way children do when they've inherited too many unspoken things. I remember. This room, the mother says softly. Her voice cracks on room. No one replies. A drawer sticks, then opens. She pulls out a fork, still stained, still crooked, and lays it flat on the table like evidence. I used to eat off this. Still, no answer. But the photo on the fridge is new or old, but recently moved. A man in uniform, smiling too wide, crooked tooth. The same one her daughter has, but the photo hid something worse. Behind it, tucked into the magnet frame, a paper. Folded, then refolded, the edges oily with age. Her fingers shake as she opens it. A birth certificate. Her daughter's name, her address, but the phone number listed. It's not hers. I never gave you this. You didn't have to, the grandmother says finally. Her voice is softer than memory allows. He did. The heartbeat thuds. What did you do? The old woman doesn't blink. I kept her safe. No, you kept me away. The rabbit's head slumps forward. One ear bends like it's listening. Do you know what it's like? The mother says, barely audible, to give birth in a shelter bathroom? The grandmother looks down. I bled for hours. The child plays with the fork now, scraping it across the table slowly, like scoring something deep. I had no name to give her, the mother continues, so I gave her mine. The old woman's voice cracks. I never wanted that. But you let it happen. A silence wider than a scream. Then a teacup placed gently on the table, its rim chipped, a familiar scar. I made a choice, the grandmother whispers. A man came looking for you, said he knew you. Said you were in trouble. I didn't believe him. Then he showed me the photo. You and him, pregnant, standing outside a Greyhound station. He said he'd find you, said he'd bring you home. Why? Didn't you tell me? The old woman's hands are folded now, bone thin, twisted with arthritis. Because I prayed he'd fail. A single fly buzzes against the window pane, trapped, persistent. He didn't fail, the mother says. He found me, stayed with me, then left when she was born. Why? Because he was working for you. The daughter listens, but doesn't understand, yet she feels the weight of it. The way girls always feel the ache of their mother's secrets. I was scared, the grandmother says. I thought I was protecting you. I thought he'd scare you straight. I didn't think he'd love me. The word hangs in the air like steam from a cup that's long gone cold. I wanted you to come back on your own. But I did. Come back, pregnant, 17, and you locked the door. The child is drawing something in the dust now, circles, then a heart. Then she wipes it away. I thought if I pushed you hard enough, the grandmother says, you'd fight for your life, for hers. I didn't want to be the one to save you. You wanted credit, the mother says. Not consequence. Another heartbeat, this one louder. The child stands and walks out of the room. No one stops her. They all hear the tiny feet on the stairs. 1, 2, 3. The mother's breath catches. 4, 5, 6. Basement. She says, I told her not to go down there. No one moves. Until the door, creaks. Then they all rise. The light in the basement is flickering. The child stands frozen halfway down the steps. The mother reaches her, scoops her up, holds her to her chest. The child's breath is quick, but she's not crying. What is it? The grandmother asks. There's a cardboard box pushed against the far wall, labeled in thick red marker, Winter, but the photo on top shows a baby girl, wrapped in a pink hospital blanket. Blood on her cheek, unwashed, unnamed. Below it drawings, school papers, a tiny hospital bracelet, and at the bottom, in a small Ziploc bag, a curl of hair, a lock of her child's hair. The mother sinks to her knees. You kept this? I got it from him, the grandmother says. When he left you, I told him never to return. But he gave me that, said it would be the last thing you'd ever send. So you did know where I was. I didn't know how to come back from it. You watched me suffer and saved souvenirs. I watched me suffer, the grandmother says. Every day. I didn't know how to say sorry without breaking everything open. That's what sorry is. The daughter leans into her mother, whispering something only she can hear. The mother nods. She stands, walks past the grandmother, past the memory. OF screams and shut doors. She sets the box on the kitchen table, opens it. Piece by piece, she lays the contents out. Hair, photo, bracelet, report card with a bent corner. This is my history, she says. The grandmother says nothing. The daughter lifts the hospital bracelet. Is this mine? The mother nods. Can I keep it? Only if we all do. Then the daughter does something unexpected. She takes the chipped teacup, fills it with tap water, and places the bracelet inside. Now it's clean, she says. They sit. All three. Not as mother and daughter and mistake, but as women with names and scars and choices. The grandmother reaches for the cup. Her hand trembles. She drinks. The child watches. The mother doesn't flinch. And for the first time in 40 years. No one leaves the table. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. I forgive you, the daughter says. And the chandelier sways above them, though no one touched it. There used to be wild strawberries here, she whispered. Never planted them. They just came. Edged along the fence, under the lilac bush, crawling through the half-sunken boards of the old shed like red secrets. She used to pick them in July, rinse them in the cracked bird bath, and eat them warm off her fingers. Her daughter had done the same once, a smear of red across her cheek, the stem still dangling from her teeth like she'd caught it mid-giggle. Now, the yard was quieter. Overgrown, yes, but not wild. Like the house itself, it exhaled and left behind only the things that couldn't be sold. Roots, shadows, old hurt. She stepped through the broken gate. Her boots sunk slightly into damp soil. It had rained that morning, the earth still breathing. In one hand she carried a small trowel, in the other, a letter folded in thirds. The paper was soft from rereading, edges curled. A final draft never sent. It wasn't forgiveness she carried. It was a full stop, but the photo hid something worse. She passed the fig tree barren, leaning, the bark scarred by initials she didn't remember carving. Maybe her mother had. Maybe someone before that. But the cuts had healed over awkwardly. The tree living around the wounds. That was something. She moved to the base of the maple. The same tree she'd cried under at 13. Fists balled, her voice hoarse from the kind of argument that splits something loose inside you. Her mother had thrown the necklace. She had torn the letter. Neither had bent to pick up either, and maybe that's when the garden started dying. She knelt. The ground was soft, but her knees still stung from the pressure. She could hear a lawnmower faintly in another yard. A dog barked. Somewhere a wind chime caught a wandering breeze. She laid the letter beside her, stared at it, almost said something to it. But what do you say to a ghost who never apologized? She began to dig. Slow, deliberate. The trowel clicking against a buried root, the soil giving in layers dark. Then darker, the torn receipt fluttered from her pocket. She tucked it back in. Kept it. In the house behind her, another family lived now. Kids maybe. Or just a couple. Who liked the bones of old things. They hadn't touched the garden. Hadn't paved it, or fenced it, or tried to erase its memory. That kindness startled her. She dug until the hole was palm deep. Pressed the folded letter into it. It fit like it belonged there. A silence followed. She didn't cry. She didn't smile. She just sat back and watched the wind move the leaves. Her daughter was 3 towns away, raising a girl of her own now. The same wild temper, the same look when hurt turned stubborn. Sometimes she heard her mother and her daughter's voice, and she wasn't sure which one made her flinch. Once, her mother had tried to grow peonies here, delicate things. They never bloomed long. One summer, they rotted from the inside out, petals collapsing into soft mush before they ever opened. She blamed the soil. But maybe it wasn't the soil. Maybe some gardens inherit grief, but this one could hold something new. She reached into the canvas bag beside her, pulled out a single packet of seeds, no name, no label. Just a white envelope, with a fingerprint stain on the back. She didn't remember where it came from. She poured them into her palm. Tiny things. Like freckles. Like baby teeth. She tilted them into the hole, over the buried letter. Pressed dirt gently on top, smoothed it. Patted it. The gesture so tender it made her throat ache. Then she sat back on her heels and stared at her hands. Years ago, those hands had slammed a door her daughter was standing behind. Years ago. Those hands had trembled when she turned the lock, and the echo of that lock had never quite left her. But the echo had changed, because yesterday, her daughter had called. Just called. No demand, no apology, no knife in her voice. Just said she was making soup, and did she still like lentils? She had paused too long before answering, but that pause had broken something. There had always been a rhythm of punishment in their silence. Now there was the possibility of pause. If justice still matters. You'll want the next page. She turned slightly, scanned the fence. The old wind chime still hung crooked on the nail by the gate. She remembered her mother buying it from a roadside stall, swearing the sound calmed her nerves. It never did, but now it sounded like breath. Like the kind of exhale that finally lets something go. She brushed her fingers against the soil one. Last time. Then stood. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out the silver necklace. The one her mother had thrown. The clasp still broken, the charm still missing. She held it in her palm. Maybe she would leave it here too. But something in her resisted. Instead, she looped it around her fingers and closed her fist. Some things didn't need to be buried. They just needed to be carried. She turned toward the gate. Behind her, the garden sat still, damp, waiting. She didn't look back. She didn't have to. She had planted something. She had buried the last letter at the base of the tree. If she hadn't left me, I never would have found myself. The first memory was always sound. Her mother humming low and off-key. The clink of a spoon against porcelain, rain pattering against a warped window pane. She was 5 then. Small and frightened, watching her. Mother scrubbed dishes like the silence between them could be washed away with enough soap. Now, 10 years since she'd spoken forgiveness out loud, she stood in the same kitchen, only it wasn't hers. It was smaller. The cabinets creaked. A child's drawing fluttered from the fridge, held by a magnet shaped like a crooked heart. The baby shifted in her arms, her daughter. 6 weeks old, warm and impossibly light. She rocked gently, more out of instinct than awareness. Outside, dusk crawled over the lawn like smoke. A photo sat face down on the counter. Not out of shame, just readiness. She hadn't flipped it in weeks. "Mama," her daughter cooed, the sound not quite a word yet, but almost. The syllable felt ancient, like it belonged to every woman who ever left and every girl who ever waited. She whispered stories sometimes, Not fairy tales, but truths made small enough for a child. Tonight, she began again. She loved me wrong. She said softly, but it was still love. The baby gurgled, sucking gently on her fist. Her hand reached, almost without thinking, for the old envelope buried in the drawer beneath the spoons, yellowed, soft at the edges. It had her name on it, written in that sharp, trembling handwriting she used to imitate for fun. Inside, the letter was barely a page. Her mother had written it the night she disappeared for good. Not the first time she'd vanished, but the last time she meant it. But the photo hid something worse. The back had a date, June 14th, 2015. Her mother, arms crossed, standing behind a tree, watching. Behind her, her own daughter, pregnant and barefoot, unaware. She'd followed her. For years, she never knocked, she never called, she just stayed close. Sometimes the heart only survives by hiding. She remembered when the forgiveness came. Not as a word, not as a moment. It came slowly like thaw. It showed up in how she said her mother's name, in how she stopped flinching at old songs, in how she looked at her child without fear of becoming the same. There had been fire in her once. She'd wanted to scream at graves, to burn every letter, to let that legacy rot in the dirt. But grief has a strange hunger. Eventually, it feeds on silence. She pulled the photo from the drawer, and this time she didn't look away. Her mother's eyes weren't angry in it. They were tired, bruised, like she'd run out of ways to say she was sorry. In her palm, the photo trembled. Or maybe her hand did. The baby laughed, a full sudden burst like bells in a funeral hall. She turned toward the laugh. The child looked up at her like she knew a secret, like she'd seen everything and loved her anyway. And for the first time in years, she felt something released. Not forget, just loosen. She stepped onto the porch. The night air was sharp, wet with the smell of new earth. The yard stretched before her, a patchwork of weeds and soil and half-dead flowers that no one had tended since the day they sold the old house. But the tree was still there, the one from the photo, a willow, its branches draped like the arms of a mourning woman. She carried her daughter down the steps. Her bare feet touched damp grass, and somewhere in the shadows, a cricket began its low, rasping cry. She reached the base of the willow and sank to her knees. Her breath hitched, not from pain, but memory. That tree had seen everything. The bruises, the goodbyes, the letters buried and dug up again. The daughter she was, the woman she became. But the willow held more than memory. Beneath its roots, something waited. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a second letter. One she wrote this morning. For the mother who never read bedtime stories, who left casseroles on porches and bruises on hearts, who watched from the shadows because the light made her flinch. She kissed the paper once, then placed it in the hole she dug with her hands. No shovel, no ceremony. Just skin and earth. Then she covered it, slowly, carefully, like planting a seed. The baby cooed again, grabbing a fistful of her mother's shirt. One day, she whispered to the child, you'll ask why she left, why I stayed, why none of us could say the right thing at the right time. The baby blinked. And I'll tell you this, she said. We come from women who loved like ghosts, who touched only when the lights were off, who held their pride like prayer beads. The wind stirred. The willow creaked. But I loved you in daylight. And for that, the cycle was broken. She rose, the dirt clinging to her palms like ink. Her eyes stayed on the tree. No tears, just breath, just quiet. Her daughter squirmed in her arms, yawned wide, then nestled in. The letter lay buried, but not lost. She walked back up the porch, past the cracked swing, the rusted nail where wind chimes once hung, the screen door that never quite closed. A single yellow bloom pushed up, near the tree's roots. She hadn't planted it. She hadn't seen it before, but it was there. Alive, unashamed. She didn't smile. Not yet, but something in her face changed. Less armor. More breath. Inside, the kitchen smelled like cinnamon and milk. The photo still sat on the counter, untouched. But she didn't turn it over. She didn't need to anymore. If justice still matters, you'll want the next page. The baby stirred in her sleep. One hand twitching open and closed. She traced the child's cheek with her fingertip. Slow, reverent. The girl's skin was warm, whole, unmarked by history. If she hadn't left me, she said again, softer this time, I never would have found myself. And beneath the willow, the earth held its breath.